In this episode, we talk with artist and self-proclaimed infomaniac David Doherty. He'll share tales of his Hollywood pursuits, from project researcher for amusement parks and Warner Brothers documentaries to working on the show King of the Hill. His art has been displayed in galleries, and his house even had a cameo in a music video. Hey there, I'm Maria.
And I'm Stephanie, and we're your hosts for Creative Conversations with Generation Jones,
A podcast where we interview real people of a certain age who have been living a life of creativity.
Some do it for a living, and some do it because it fills their soul. But they all have great stories and pearls of wisdom to share.
With us, so grab a cocktail or two and enjoy.
Yep. Today, we have a very special guest here from Palm Springs, California. Artist and infomaniac, Dave Doherty.
Hello.
Woohoo! Yes, indeed.
Welcome, Dave.
Welcome, Dave.
Thank you. Great to be here.
All right, so let's start with our first question, as always. What's your favorite cocktail?
Whiskey sours. Love them.
Yep, which we're drinking right now.
It's fabulous.
Do you know any interesting factoids about whiskey sours?
Well, they were invented around the time of Lincoln. He may have drunk them himself.
Oh, he may have.
Yes.
Maybe.
The origin of the recipe is unknown. And at one point, they used to be made with egg whites, which is kind of an odd mix for a whiskey sour.
E. coli.
Exactly. You
Right.
never know,
Well,
especially
no.
at that
Yeah.
time. But
Yeah. Well, the ones that you made for us today do not have egg whites in them, do
and they are delicious. So
they do have a beautiful orange
Cheers.
slice and a cheer.
They do. All right, cheers.
And a festive sword.
Oh,
that's
very
good.
nice. You know, some people call that an old lady drink, right?
Yeah, but I don't think so.
No.
I've been drinking them for as long as I can remember.
And you are not an old lady.
No. Well, maybe in my private life. I don't
We probably won't go into that today, though.
know. You don't want to see those pictures. Yeah.
Ooh. Although there will be some photos available, probably not those.
No. So, Dave, what did you want to be when you were young, when you were growing up?
An artist is all I've ever, I've always loved to create. I've always been into drawing and painting and creating. I used to do like little set designs and stuff when I was a kid. I could never think just on paper. I had to like build things. I'd just like make dioramas and do puppet shows and all that kind of stuff.
Cool.
So you thought in 3D when you were young.
Yeah, I had they used to give us, one sheet of paper to draw on in kindergarten. I'd always grab 5 because I could draw windows on the pieces of paper and then fold them into squares and then tape them down to one piece of paper and make little cityscapes. I was in kindergarten.
Wow.
And it was like, I've always thought dimensionally.
Interesting. Yeah.
And you grew up where?
A little town called Pacific Palisades in California. A real bad part of town.
Is it near the water?
Yes.
Did
It's
you
right next to Malibu.
Okay. Did you spend a lot
That's
of
a
time?
bad part.
What?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know.
No, it's-
Aw.
It's a
Hey,
very nice part of town.
And you came from a big family, right?
8 kids. I was the 7th of 8.
The 7th of 8. Wow.
And I had a little brother who had Down syndrome, and it was 8 kids. And then on top of that, my mom liked to take in runaways from time to time. So we had, anytime, 11 kids in the house.
Wow. So you grew up around a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people, yeah.
And you had a lot of famous people in your neighborhood, didn't
Yes. People like Dom DeLuise and Karen Grassley. And we had Steven Spielberg living up the street, Bobby Vinton.
you? Wow.
Wow.
Sylvester Stallone lived up the street from us. It was. We moved out in the 80s, but that was right when it started to really go crazy. But really get a lot of star people there.
And your neighborhood, what did they call your neighborhood?
Peyton Place.
Why?
It was so funny because there were like some rogue kids in town that would change the Welcome to Pacific Palisades sign to Welcome to Peyton Place.
A lot of drama that went on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of things going on behind the doors, curtains, and whatever.
Oh, my
Ooh,
goodness.
it was the 60s and the 70s.
Yes.
It's not like that stuff goes on like that now. Probably.
I think the only thing that was missing was the housekeeper hanging herself in the closet upstairs.
Oh, Jesus. God.
Like the movie, sorry, Peyton Place.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy.
So Of course, I know the answer to this.
Go ahead. Ask the question anyway.
Because I went to college with
I
you,
know.
Dave. But tell us about where you went to college and what your major was.
Okay. I started off in the Kansas City Art Institute right out of high school. And I had a teacher there who told me I had no future in art. I was wasting my time. And I left.
What the hell's wrong with teachers that do that?
I know. I can't
Why do
believe
they do
teachers
that?
do that.
Sometimes, though, I think you can take it as being they're telling you the truth, or you take it as a challenge. And I looked at it and I went, I don't believe this. So I went to Atlanta. I went to Atlanta College of Art, and I arrived there in January 1981 and stayed there off and on until 87, going to the Atlanta College of Art, studying drawing and painting, and just having a good time, meeting some wonderful people.
So the whole 3D-ness of your artistry, did that become, did you do any 3D stuff there?
Not so much there. Well, I did in the sense that I began to create dimensional spaces on paper and realizing things like the depth of I was doing some drawings that were 7 by 9 feet. They were charcoal and pastel, using a lot of photo backdrop paper, just exploring that. But it was a lot of fun.
Tell us the Michael Myers story.
Okay. When I graduated from the Atlanta College of Art, I got back to Los Angeles and I couldn't find a job. No one would hire me. I wanted to get into animation, and I got like the Dean's Award at ACA. And I thought I was the art jock of the college. I was really the bee's knees type of thing. So I would tried getting a job for about 9-10 months, couldn't get a job. And one day I was sitting in a cemetery drawing a statue. And I'm thinking to myself, the drawing was turning out badly. And I thought to myself, maybe that guy in Kansas City was right after all. Maybe I am wasting my time. And, just give up. Why not? And I looked up in the sky, and there was written across the sky, it said, Michael Myers is back. And it was an ad for the new Halloween movie. Mm-hmm. Michael Myers was my teacher's name in Kansas City who told me I had no future in art.
Oh, booyah!
So I gave him the one finger salute and loudly said, fuck you to the whole thing. And I said, I know I'm right. If you're doing skywriting, I know I'm right.
That was a sign.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's a good thing to keep an eye out for, the signs, because sometimes those things just fall in front of you, and you just keep an eye out for them.
Mm-hmm. And they're there, and if you don't see them, then your life might take a different trajectory. And if you do, it might be an affirmation that, yep, this is the right direction.
Exactly.
And it did take a better
Yeah.
direction, because after that, you got a job with...
Well, shortly after that, I started working for a company called Landmark Entertainment Group. It was on Hollywood Boulevard. We were in the basement under the El Capitan Theater.
That's the round one. No.
It's right on Hollywood, right across from the Chinese Theater.
Okay.
And it was quite an education, because I had built one model it was a copy of Geppetto's house from Pinocchio, Disney's Pinocchio. And I copied it from a drawing, and I made a foam core model of it. Now, I had taken this picture on 3 different job interviews, and all 3 of them had that in their menu of the things that they were working with. And the last job, Landmark, was building a park in Japan called Sanrio Puroland.
A theme park.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It was a 6-acre, totally enclosed amusement park for the people that bring you Hello Kitty.
Oh, my God.
Oh.
And it was very strange, was they showed me the buildings that they were copying things from, and there's Geppetto's house again. And I'm like, I built the right model. Mm-hmm. And I got the job for $10 an hour. It was great. 1989.
That was good back then. That was good.
But we're down there in the basement creating these models because apparently when they sent drawings to Japan, they didn't want to look at the drawings. So we copied the plans and made them into models. And then we'd ship the models to them, and they'd break the models apart and copy the models. That's what they were drawing from.
Interesting.
Huh.
And we had incidents where the models arrived damaged, and we'd get there and they'd have drawings of the damaged models to present to us. It's like, well, they didn't know the difference.
Wow.
But it was quite an education. I worked with some absolutely wonderful people.
So you worked as a model builder there?
Yeah, for about 1.5 years. But my forte in that, I have very shaky hands, but I ended up being the landscaper. I landscaped all the models. I built trees, I built planters, I did everything. But it was all in miniature.
Okay.
And some of these models are like, 12 feet long by 8 feet wide, and it's an entire park.
Wow.
So you have to do all the plants through the whole park in miniature.
So when you say models, so you're saying people were building actual small versions of the amusement park rides.
Yes.
And you were building the landscaping around that.
Yes.
And then who were the models for?
For Sanrio, Japan, for the Sanrio company.
Okay.
That was mainly what we were doing. And also for various jobs. We get jobs from other companies, like stuff in Vegas. We worked on projects in Korea. It was kind of a work-for-hire company, but it was founded by a guy who used to be an Imagineer, and he went off on his own.
Interesting.
Cool. So where did you go from there when you left there?
Well, the week I bought my house, they laid me off.
Oh, no.
But between the model shop, I got to meet the designers that were in the heads of the company, and they kind of brought me up to the 7th floor, where I became the assistant to all the designers. Because, as I said, I'm an infomaniac. They would ask me questions, and I just knew what they were looking for. I have this sense of, I can look at something once and I'll pick it up. I'm the guy you call up and say, here's what we want to do. What will it look like? And you go and find all the stuff.
Physically go and get the stuff and bring them the things. Okay.
And it's something where, like, now I hear a lot of people saying, well, you can just do that on a computer. And I'm like, well, the thing is, if you go on a computer, all you're going to see is what you're looking for. As opposed to with a book, when you flip through a book, you don't know what you're going to find. And you'll find things that you could make you think twice about what you're drawing or designing. And that happened a lot.
And when you say a book, what kind of a book is it?
Photography books, anything. And I find books from like Old World's Fairs or pictures of Mexico or pictures of Tahiti or whatever. And it could be a picture of jewelry or something that you wouldn't think could make a piece of architecture, but we designed one was supposed to be a Playboy casino, and it was a giant woman. The whole building was a giant woman.
Wow.
And it was like,
for Vegas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it never happened, but.
But you also have a photographic memory.
Yeah.
You can remember everything.
So a photographic memory, like a photo-idenic memory, right? So if you look at a page, if you read a book, like, what would you remember from the book if you actually read a novel?
Maybe I can pick up the highlights, and I can generally remember everything exactly where it is in the book and the premise of the story. Where it comes up, where it, how it feeds back and forth.
Okay, so would you remember exact words? Could you recite? If I said page, 42? No. Okay, but
I'm much more visual. In that
visual.
sense. Yeah.
So you remember everything that you've seen?
Basically, yeah.
Do you remember that happened on April 12th?
Yes.
Yes.
I've been accused of that. I have friends in Palm Springs. He goes, here's Dave. He'll tell you everything you need to know. It's like, about what? It's like, oh, you ask him anything.
Wow. Do people like you for that or not like you for that?
Well, they liked me when I would give them the answers to win trivia games. And they asked me, why don't you play?
Yeah.
And I start playing and I start winning. They're going, why don't you stop playing?
Wow. So for research, that's perfect because you know exactly where to go.
Yeah. And it helped because I was amazed that all my days of going to Disneyland and all those things, I mean, I was a total Disnoid. I was one of those people that just was obsessed with Disney. And I went there and I studied all this stuff. And when I started working for this company, I'm like, what do you mean you don't know the track layout of the Snow White ride? I'm like, and they look at me going, why do you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, because doesn't everybody?
And so when people would find out that you have that photographic memory, would that be we need to hire him because this is cool?
Yeah, and it also gets things thrown at you. It's like, oh, give it to Dave. He'll do it. He's the firefighter. It's like I was the go-to guy. I was the border collie, I called it. It's like you keep running around, make sure everything's moving forward. So I got a reputation for that.
Do you not have to take notes on things?
I'll generally come down with cliff notes, just kind of like beat words and say, when I got laid off from Landmark, I went to work for a gay news magazine in West Hollywood called Frontiers News Magazine. Mm-hmm. They were a really low budget company and we had to do everything waxing. I mean, this is 1991 and they're still doing waxing. It was on computers. And every time the boards would come back. Yeah.
What is waxing?
You had to literally run the ads or the paper through a machine that put wax on the back, and you could put on a board and then flatten it out, and that's how it stuck to the board.
Oh.
Yeah.
So we did pay stuff that way.
It's like everything by hand, yeah.
Okay.
And then when the boards would come back, they didn't want to pay for new boards, so we had to scrape them all off and use them again.
Oh,
Wow.
that's labor intensive.
That is.
Yeah.
And it's funny at that time, because it wasn't computers and all that stuff, just the logistics of putting together a 60-page magazine to a 100-page magazine. And we also had a lot of models, which were actually, the escorts. They had a whole section of that. And I used to have to interface with those guys sometimes, which was very interesting.
Interface. He uses the word interface.
He's being discreet.
Yeah. We had one guy come in one time with a photograph, and it was literally a Polaroid. It was of his torso, and it was folded in half, and it was kind of dark. And I took it in the dark room, and I tried to work with it and figure it out and get it, And I brought it back to him. I said, does this work? And he goes, well. And I said, well, it would help if it was lighter. And he looked at me and he goes, but that's how much I weighed when the picture was taken. And I thought, I guess you're in the right profession.
Yeah, exactly.
You're using your God-given gift here,
Did you reshoot the photo? Take out your Polaroid?
He had to get me another picture.
Okay.
We had another guy that had his picture taken nude sitting in the middle of Rodeo Drive. And we're like, how'd you do this? But we can't publish it. We have to put a bathing suit on you.
Yeah.
So we drew a bathing suit on him. He came and looked at the ad and he goes, there's one problem. I don't have a bathing suit like that.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
So how long did you last working there?
I was there for 2.5 years.
Until Universal came and
I
snagged you up.
I got a call on a Friday from my old boss at Landmark that I hadn't seen for a couple of years, Greg Dameron. And he said, Dave, there's a job here with your name all over it. It was a Friday. It was my day off. He goes, come on down, but you got to be here in an hour because this guy's leaving for Japan. So I put on what I thought were my good clothes and my white shirt and these pants that were made of this really thick fabric. And I was wearing bowling shoes. Wow. I was trying to be kind of,
quirky,
hip.
Hip, artsy, yeah.
I walked in and they're like looking me up and down like, okay. But my boss was a guy named Norm Newberry, who was an art director of movies like Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Ghost Story. And he was a very, very famous art director. And we just clicked. We absolutely clicked. And within 20 minutes, he's like, how much you want to make? Here's what's your social security number? Wow. I got to go.
Wow.
And I had the job.
At
Universal Studios, at Universal Creative, or it was Universal Planning and Development at that point.
Okay, we're going to take a little break now, and when we come back, we're going to refresh our drinks, and we're going to hear all about Universal Studios.
Yeah, here we go. And we're back. Okay.
We're back.
Hello.
Hello.
And we're at Universal Studios.
Oh, yeah. Only. But Dave was. And what did you tell
ride
us?
The movies.
What were you doing there at Universal Studios? And then this is what, the 1990s?
This was 1994. Exactly 30 years ago this month, I started on the project.
Wow.
And they brought me in to be the project researcher. There were only about 40 people on the whole team at that time.
What was the project?
Universal's Islands of Adventure.
Amusement park.
Amusement park, which they were believing was going to be the last great amusement park ever built because people were stopping investing in these things at that time. So the whole crew was made of set designers and film designers, and it wasn't because there was no training for theme park stuff except if you worked at Disney, where you learned by working on those projects. And a lot of people that we worked with were from Disney. But it was very electric. It was wonderful.
What were you doing there?
The art directors would say, the entrance to the park is called Port of Entry. And they told me we need a North African port town. Now, North African port town is anything. I mean, it's an eclectic, and if you go there, you'll see it's a mix mash of all sorts of stuff because it's supposed to be travelers arriving in a place. So you're representing all these different countries. So I pulled things from every era I could find, stairs from Mexico, things that were from France, things that were from Japan, whatever. And I was so lucky that the art directors just said, just feed us, just give us stuff. And they just let me go. It was really wonderful.
So you physically were acquiring things, the staircase and books.
All the photographs of the books.
All the information,
all the information.
to give to the designers.
Okay, so you were not actually getting the physical things. No. You were showing them, you were gathering ideas.
Photographs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
to assist them in their designs.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, with my background knowing Disney and things like that, I was like going, okay, this will work because I know the show impact of those things or how something will work. But it also turned into a job of like dealing with all the presentations. I ended up having to hang like almost all the presentations for the park whenever they'd have meetings.
What is presentations mean?
All the images of when they were trying to sell the project, like show what the lands were going to look like and what they were planning. And
that was a big job, huge job.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
It's kind of a legacy for you to have that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, when you think about that kind of a job, it's this small group of people, billions of people have seen it. It's like it's not, and enjoyed it. I was just sitting down there the other night watching these people. I'm like going, I'm kind of responsible for part of this, I was there. But it was great.
And you were just there, right?
First time
you just went to go visit there.
For the first time since it opened 25 years ago.
Wow.
That's
it was
amazing.
wonderful.
That's amazing.
So how long were you there with Universal Studios with that project?
I was on that project for 2 years, but I was also on, they shifted me onto Universal Studios Japan, which got me I got into the archives at Universal, and we could go through old, because they're like, okay, we need Back to the Future plans. We need plans from this movie, plans, we need plans of Western Town building, something. So we got to go through all the old set designs from all their old movies and make copies of them and use them and recreate them.
To recreate that part of the theme park in the mode of that movie.
Yeah, exactly. To recreate the courthouse from Back to the Future. I have the drawings of like every version of that courthouse from Back to the Future.
Wow.
And again, they let me just feed them. They just said, we trust you. Just go out there and see what you bring back. It's like, let's see what he's got now. But it was also someone I had access to the entire studio. So I could walk through all the sound stages every day. I'd eat my lunch in like 10 minutes and walk the lot. I could walk to the Psycho House and back in 45 minutes.
Wow.
Oh my God.
It was great.
Who'd you see? Drop some names.
Around there, Steven Spielberg. We saw, most of them were the technical people. I mean, most of them were like, Edgar Bronfman, who had just bought the studio at that time, which was a lot of fun. We had the day we found out the studio was sold. Someone told me, and I went to the president's secretary and I said, did you hear we got sold? And she goes, go get a newspaper. So I got the newspaper and I came in and she goes, go take it to Bob. It's Bob Ward. He's in a meeting. So I walk into this meeting, this whole boardroom full of executives, and I hand Bob the paper and he goes, oh my God, we've been bought.
They didn't even know?
It was, Seagram's did it completely in the dark. It was done it wasn't a hostile takeover.
That's really crazy though.
But they bought up like 51% or something like that, controlling.
So is that why you ended up leaving?
I kind of left because Islands ended and Universal Studios Japan was kind of a copy of Florida with the other stuff that I'd already done. But it just started kind of winding down. But one of the things I did was I used to walk around the back lot, like I said, every day. And I went up to the old ice tunnel, which was built for like a $6 Million Man episode in like 1975 or something, sometime in the 70s. And we had just done a movie called Dante's Peak. And I read that the end of the movie was a lava tunnel. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be neat if we painted it like a lava tunnel? So I went up and I walked into this guy's office at like 8 o'clock in the morning. And I just stood in his doorway and I said, his name was Eddie Newquist. I said, Eddie, what if we took the ice tunnel and painted it with blacklight paint and made it into the Dante's Peak lava tunnel? And he goes, hey, that's pretty good. Within a couple days, suddenly this memo comes out. Guess what we're doing? And they did it. And they gave me credit for it.
Oh,
which
they
is,
did?
Yeah,
Good,
which is,
good.
I was told later, they don't do that. They said that was kind of a slip on this guy's part, but I got credit for it.
He was doing you right by you.
Yeah, but that's not, that doesn't happen in the
Doesn't
studio
happen too
system.
often. No, I know. Yeah.
So when that project ended, where'd you go next?
You went back to Landmark.
Yeah, well, it was off and on with Landmark. I was working for a guy named Chuck Cancelier, who did a lot of their master renderings and plannings and designs and theme parks. And Landmark hired me back as a set designer, or more of a ride designer. And I worked on projects for like Ethel M, and we did the M&M's Academy in Las Vegas,
What was that?
It was supposed to be a travel agency where you traveled to the chocolates. You went to, carob, or you went to, dark chocolate, or you went to, macadamia.
Oh, that's funny.
And then it ended up that you went to this experience where you went to the M&M's Academy, where you got your M. How do you get your M? And it turned into a 3D movie, and that was the experience.
And what did you do for that?
Concept, I was one of a team of about 8 guys just trying to put the script together, trying to do illustrations, whatever. I was never really working as an artist at all in that. I was the research guy.
Okay.
And it was funny because anytime the creative group wanted me to pull me into it, they go, he's too busy. He's too busy doing research or whatever he was doing. It's like, we need him doing this. And we got enough artists drawing.
You were too
stuff.
good at it. That's why. They
Exactly.
didn't want to let you do anything
I was irreplaceable,
else.
which was a curse.
Yeah. Then you finally got a job doing animation, which is what you always really wanted to try, correct?
About 9 months into Landmark again, I tried out to work on the show King of the Hill, which I didn't like the look of the show when I first saw it, but it was a job in animation, which I'd always wanted. I always sort of tried to do that. And I was a real square peg in a round hole as far as they were concerned, because I'm used to corporate life and being just a freewheeling, I could talk to anybody. Well, you don't talk to directors and things like that in those shows. You have to, if you confront somebody, they don't appreciate that. And I didn't understand that. But I worked on...
There's a pecking order there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what did you do, not knowing the pecking order?
I did all of the background layouts for about 10 episodes. In fact, one of the episodes is called Buckley's Angel, and it was the episode that won the Emmy.
Oh.
But that was also the episode that basically got me fired.
What did you do to get
Well,
what did you do?
I kind of confronted the director, and that wasn't good. I was a little too out of the box for them, and I didn't. And also, you're seeing those things. You're in a cubicle, in a windowless room, and it's like it's all you do is sit all day and draw the kitchen, and draw that house, draw that umbrella, and draw the lawnmowers and all that stuff.
So you were drawing by hand,
Yes.
And this was before computer.
No. The man that opened, it's called Film Roman. They also do The Simpsons. The man Phil Roman was an animator at Disney, and he wanted to open a studio where everything was hand drawn. So if you watch The Simpsons, it was all hand drawn, and so was King of the Hill, and they did Family Guy as well.
But tell us about the documentaries that you did for Warner Brothers.
I worked for Warner
curating
Brothers.
Those.
It was another one. I got another call from a former Landmark coworker, and he'd also worked with me at Universal, a guy named John Rust. And he was a wonderful director, producer, all this stuff. And he calls me up from a company called Curdy Pellerin in Hollywood. Dave, get down here. We got a job with your name all over it. And I'm like, okay. And I get down there, and they're working on documentaries for Warner Brothers. Now, in a dream job, it's wonderful. It's like, okay, we're doing 3 one-hour documentaries about the making of The Adventures of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre with Humphrey Bogart, and Yankee Doodle Dandy with James Cagney. And they gave me free access to the Academy archives, to the Warner archives, to just, you're opening boxes of plans that haven't been opened since the movie ended. Generally when the movie would end.
You?
Oh, it was amazing because you're looking through things like for Yankee Doodle Dandy. I found a handwritten copy of a script for Peck's Bad Boy, which was one of George M. Cohan's first plays, and it was written by George M. Cohan. I'm like, what is that like?
That he had held in his hand.
Yeah.
That you were holding, he had held.
There it is. Or they sent me, when I went to the Academy, I said, you have John Huston's files from this? And they're like, yeah. And they brought this little cart. One of the things was marked artwork. And I'm like, artwork from Treasure of Sierra Madre? What could that be? And they opened it up in his storyboards. It's about 20 pages of storyboards. And I think John Huston drew them. They were from the fight scene when they beat up the guy that didn't give them the money for doing all their oil work, whatever. And I called up the archives at Warner's and I said, who did these storyboards? And they go, storyboards? What are you talking about? I said, well, I found, and they were shocked. They're like, really? And I also made sure that there was a file on that. It's on the DVD that came out in 2003 for this. That they also honored the production artists. So we created a whole thing about the people that did the illustrations and matte paintings and all that stuff for the film. So we really went behind the scenes and did as much as possible.
So you're doing the research to help them produce the documentary, to give them stuff to talk about.
All the material.
Yeah.
Well, they gave me a script initially and then said, okay, we need this image, this image, this image, this image, and anything else you can find. And then I found a lot of stuff.
Wow.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I also worked on some the DVD of The Bad Seed, and I got to sit in on the interview with Patty McCormick, which was a lot of fun. That's a real childhood fantasy because I'd seen that film since I was a little kid. I worked on about 5 Humphrey Bogart DVDs. That was something that was really interesting. Was they said, we want you to watch these 5 films and tell us if there's any odd things about them. And I watched them, and 3 of them have the same painting appearing in each one of them. It's called End of the Trail. It's an Indian sitting on the back of a horse. And I contacted Norm Newberry at Universal, and who's a veteran art director. I said, why would that happen? Why would you see the same painting movie after movie? Yeah. He goes, generally that is the signature piece by a set dresser who's not going to get credit. So that is there. So when you see the movie, you go, oh, I know who did that because there it is. That's his signature.
That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah,
so if you look at some of those movies, you'll see that painting in the background and you know that person did that set.
Interesting.
But got no credit.
Elroy was here.
Kilroy, yeah.
Kilroy, right.
Exactly.
Sorry.
That's funny.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
So when did you decide to check it all and become a fine artist?
In 2004, the market dried up. There was no work. I couldn't find a job. So I went to sell my house. My address was 1352. So I went 13 times 52. So that's 13 years. I'd been there for 13 years. And I took that as a sign. I said, okay, sell the house. And my realtor goes, so you're thinking of moving to the desert? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, we got a realtor there. I don't know him. He just started with us, and he started with us 2 weeks ago. His name is Rick Karp. And I went, that name sounds really familiar. And I thought back on my days at Frontiers, and I went, okay. So I call him up. He goes, let me ask you something. Do you in L.A., there's 2 parts of town. There's West Hollywood, where the Twinks and the whatever are, and there's Silver Lake, which is kind of daddy's leather, rough trade, stuff. He goes, which one do you like? I said, Silver Lake. I said, I have to ask you something. Are you Cole Tucker, the leather porn star? Yes. So I got to go ride around in a car as he's smoking cigars. And he goes, I'm going to show you 9 houses, 8 of which you won't want. I said, okay. So we see the 8 houses. And I just go, well, no. He goes, now I'm going to take you to the one you want. And I got to the house, and I got out of the car, and his face is dismounted. It's like looking at the Matterhorn. And I just thought immediately, this is it. I know this is it. And I went and I paid cash for it because I just made enough off my house in Glendale to just buy it outright. $200,000.
Wow.
Got a half an acre of property, and it's very, very quiet.
And tell us about the history of that house that you found out afterwards. Yeah.
It was built in 1958 as part of a housing project. It was a model home. When I moved into it, someone had completely rehabbed it. It was beautiful. And about a month after I moved in, I'm sitting in a bar watching a music video, the Tears for Fears, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. And I go, oh, that's my house. The opening, I'm like, what? And the bartender's looking at me like, yeah, you old drunk. So I go home, and sure enough, I get a frame grab of it and match it. And yep, it's my house, except my house is clapboard now. It was stucco then. And I contact the director, whose name is Nigel Dick. And I asked him, I said, how did you choose that house? And he goes, well, we went up there and we asked him, and they said, okay. And I said, where'd you find the kid in the cowboy outfit? And he goes, he lived there. I said, so you just said, can we use your house and your kid? Sure.
Oh, that's too
funny. That's a riot.
That is so funny. Yeah. So now, ever since you've been there, you're a fine artist and you show your artwork.
It's amazing to have the opportunity at 43 to be given the opportunity to just do what you want. Your bills are taken care of, in a sense that I was getting money from an oil income my grandfather left me, a few $100 a month off that. Okay. And I went to pick up a box of National Geographics and didn't use my knees, used my back, and literally crushed one of my vertebrae. Nice. So I shrank like an entire inch, which was, so they put me on disability. So I'm getting disability and oil income, and it's like, okay, you've been given the opportunity to do your work. And I am very obsessive. My sister used to say, if you're not doing something, you should be doing something. And why aren't you doing something? So I do two things at once. I have to be doing, if you can't do two things at once, the first thing isn't worth doing.
So what are you generally doing when you're doing two things at once?
Just painting, drawing. I pick up projects. I worked on a book about Pacific Ocean Park, which was an amusement park that I went to when I was about 2. And then when it was being torn down in the 60s and 70s, I used to play in the ruins, which was wonderful. I have a website called Rest in Peace Pacific Ocean Park about that, and a book called There Once Was a Place Called Pop.
And you can purchase that book on
my website.
rippop.com, on his website.
What was amazing, too, is to realize how many people were also obsessed with it. Because when I started doing like Facebook and stuff like that, I started going, wow, there are a lot of people that are really interested in this.
In this particular theme park.
In this, yes.
That was taken down. So you drew it from memory, right?
I worked when I was at Warner Brothers, they had a place called Warner Research, and all it was clip files, which was just file after file of pictures from anything. Could be newspaper photographs, could be magazine photographs, whatever. And I found a big collection of POP photographs. And I used a lot of those to use for the paintings. And I created 45 paintings for the book, and then had a show of them in Palm Springs, 2013. And it was wonderful. It was amazing. And I started working on another book. Another guy was writing a book about it too, and I started collaborating with him and giving him all my information. And that turned into there's another book from Process Media that's all about Pacific Ocean Park, and it's well done. It's thorough.
So what are you doing right now?
Basically just drawing a lot, working. I had a show in November this last year. Just drawing and painting.
And you work mostly in
charcoal. I love charcoal because it's very accommodating. You can erase it, you can move it, you can, I like one of my processes, take a piece of paper, put it on a piece of wood, rub it down with charcoal, and then you see the grain coming through it, and then draw with an eraser and pull it out, and then go back in with charcoal and kind of push and pull the image out of the paper.
Wow. And you have a whole book of those.
Yes.
And those are big, right? And
some of them are. I only did about 10 total in that size, the 8 by 9 feet, or 7 by 9 feet. But the bulk of them are 30 by 40. Place to store them is the problem.
So the very large ones, what are you drawing them on?
It's photo backdrop paper. Okay. The stuff that you can use for the backdrops and photo shoots. It's like construction paper.
Okay. And so to store them, you
just roll them up. Okay. They're all rolled up in my house, but because I don't, hang them up is it's a little daunting.
Yeah, I would think.
You got to have a big wall for that.
Yeah.
Well, I had a couple shows in Glendale back in the 95 and 2001 and I showed those. Had those drawings up, which was a lot of fun.
Do you have any nicknames?
Well, they call me Mr. Scribbles. They call me Scribbles.
Why?
Because I sit at, there's a bar in Palm Springs called Dick's on Arenas, and the bartender just goes, let me call you. He goes, I'm going to call you Scribbles. I said, okay. I said, just don't call me Sketchy.
And the reason being?
I have my sketchbook with me every day. And I sit there and I draw and drink and drink and draw. But the thing is if I don't have my sketchbook with me, I drink obsessively. I kind of have social anxiety. I can't just sit and drink. I have to drink and do something. So,
2 things at a time.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and if you're not doing something, you should be doing something. There is no industry in Palm Springs except for leisure and retirement. And you meet amazing people. One of the guys I sat down next to one night, he goes, you're working on a book about POP? And I said, yeah. He goes, I was the office boy on that project in 1958. And he sat down right next to me.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
One night, this German man came in and sat down next to me. And I'm started talking to him. And I said, "What's your name?" He goes, "Udo." And I said, "Okay." So we started talking about art and politics and all this stuff and hit it off. We were having a great time. And then I saw him again about a week later. And I said, "What is your name again?" He goes, "Udo." So I called him my brother. Talk about a spit take moment. He goes, "You're hanging out with Udo Kier?" He's Dracula in Warhol's Dracula. He's Dr. Frankenstein in Warhol's Frankenstein. He's in My Own Private Idaho. He's in a movie called Swan Song from a few years ago. He pops up in Dancer in the Dark. He's in all Lars von Trier's movies. He's in Gus Van Sant movies. And it's so funny because it's like he's this cult figure for a lot of people.
And you didn't even know, did you? You're like just
hanging out with him at the bar.
Just chatting him up.
He does Madonna videos. He's in the book Sex with Madonna. And that's, I think, why we have a friendship, because I don't treat him, I don't think of him that way. I think of it's Udo.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'll go into the bar and the bartenders will be like, "Udo's looking for you." Because he'll like walk in the bar and go, "David here?" And he'll walk out. But so it's always fun to hear, "Udo's looking for you."
So how do you measure time there when you're in the bar?
Well, I generally can judge how long a drawing takes by how much beer I've had. Or like it's like this drawing is a 1 beer drawing, or this is a beer and a half, or whatever. But I can pace it that way.
And when you're drawing there in your sketchbook at the bar, what are you drawing?
One of the things I think is important, was always taught, copy, because it's like working out. For me, sketching is cardio. It's like going to the gym and doing the bike or getting warmed up, because then I go home and do my own stuff. So I just take pictures off like actors or bodybuilders or whatever offline, blow them up to 8x10 and just take them to the bar and copy them. People are like, you're just copying pictures. It's like, no, this is a workout. This is how I warm up to go home and do my own thing, because then I don't copy anything. I just draw straight out of my head. But it's like getting there and you warm up and you just go for it. And I've got 174 sketchbooks now.
Wow.
that have about 100 pages per book.
Like flexing your art muscles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it takes me about 2 months per book. But lately, I've realized that I've been repeating. I keep a certain stack of photographs that I work with. And I'm finding that I'll have like 8 and 10 versions of this one image. So I'm going to start to photograph them and try and animate them. So again, it's bringing that back
fun.
into it.
Yeah.
So if I, stack them on top of each other, image-wise, they'll animate because they're just moving.
Right.
That's one of my projects when I get back.
What else do you still want to do professionally?
I would love to do, I love history research, turn me loose on the archives. I love that. I like Infomaniac. I love information. I love the search, the treasure hunt, and all this stuff. And I've been really lucky to have that opportunity, because people just opening up these things and saying, "Oh, I've got all that stuff." It's like, okay.
Plus, you seem to have an obsession with theme parks from when you were a child.
Yeah. So,
and you've been lucky enough to be able to work on so many of them.
I hope that there were rumors over the years that they want to do a book about the history of Universal Studios theme parks, which would go back to 1964 when it first opened. I'd love to work on that, but I don't know. It's something that they're working on it, I guess. But if I'd like to be on that team.
Throw it out in the universe.
Throw it out there and I could say yes or no. What advice would you give to someone who wanted to be an artist?
As one teacher used to say, no masterpieces, just keep working. Look at a drawing, oh, that's beautiful. Do another one. Repeating the process of drawing or painting, and do it as much as possible, because then you're like a bodybuilder. The more you work out, the bigger you get, or the more toned you get, and there you are.
Excellent.
All right, Dave, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's a lot of fun.
If anybody wants to check out Dave's art, his website is davedoherty.art. David, DAVID, DOHERTY.art. And that will give you information also how to buy his books there.
And you can follow us on our social media, right, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. X, all the things. We're on all the things, right?
And as Aunt Millie said,
shoulders back, knockers up.
Cheers.
Cheers. Good stuff.
Whiskey sours are great.